And we have breaking news today from the Justice Department, a new directive from Attorney General Bill Barr to reinstate executions of federal death penalties prisoners for the first time in nearly 2 decades. NBC Justice correspondent Pete Williams joins me now. Pete, why now?
Well, Attorney General Barr says it's time to restore the death penalty for the sake of victims and their families. He points out that under administrations of both parties, attorneys general have approved seeking the death penalty. But of course, no executions have been carried out on the federal system since 2003 for a couple of reasons. One is court fights over the lethal injection protocol, whether it's constitutional, whether it causes unnecessary suffering, and then concern about that protocol. You remember President Obama in 2014 ordered a review of the lethal injection system after that notoriously botched execution in Oklahoma using 2 relatively untested drugs. So to get around that problem, Attorney General Barr has directed the Bureau of Prisons to scrap that 3-drug protocol and use just a single drug, pentobarbital, which is a powerful barbiturate or sedative. It's long been used, for example, to euthanize animals, and 3 states have used it in strong doses to carry out executions, and it's also been now to be used in the federal system. So what Barr has directed is the Bureau of Prisons to start this protocol, and in response, the Prison Bureau has scheduled the execution of 5 prisoners beginning in December, continuing in January, all of whom carried out particularly brutal crimes that victimized and killed children. 4 of the 5 also killed adults. Now, of course, this goes against the national trend, which has been against the death penalty. Last year, for example, saw near record lows of seeking the death penalty and carrying out executions. But Barr said this is what the system demands, that this is the way to carry out justice for these victims. And
just briefly, just to avoid any confusion, there are states, primarily in the South, that still have the death penalty for state convicts, for those who have been adjudged guilty of capital crimes in state courts.
So this is only in the federal system. So, for example, if you're charged in a state, even if the state doesn't have the death penalty, but you're convicted in the federal system and you get the death penalty, then you go on federal death row. Now, Barr says that all these 5 inmates have exhausted their legal appeals. There are 60 inmates now on federal death row, Andrea.
And Timothy McVeigh, I believe, was the last execution in the federal system, if I'm correct.
Not the last, but among the last. Among those only three that were ever carried out in the modern era of the death penalty in the federal system.
Pete Williams, the store of all knowledge. Thank you so much, Pete.
Okay.
Busy time for you. And coming up, did Robert Mueller's testimony